The claps of thunder were getting louder and louder, and 4-year-old Zach hurried into Mommy and Daddy's bedroom. He said, "I'm scared." Daddy said, "I'm a little scared too. It gets really noisy." Mommy said, "Listen, go back to your bedroom. God is there. He'll sleep with you." Just then a huge clap of thunder roared overhead. Zach jumped up in bed and he said, "Mommy, you go sleep with God. I'm going to stay here and comfort Daddy." So here we are today. So what are you afraid of? You know, the Bible says, "Fear not," or "be not afraid," or a combination of those terms, 365 times. Did you know that? That's one for every day of the year. Now we know faith cometh by hearing. So does fear come by hearing. So what are you really listening to? We got to get past what's happening in this world today. There's an old gospel song I always love. "This world is not my home. I'm just passing through." Well, Gary Paxton, he was the guy who wrote Monster Mash, made billions of dollars with that crazy little song. He got saved and he became a Christian songwriter. And one thing, we used a number of his songs with Regeneration. One of those songs we opened with one year. It went like this: "If you think my head's in a different world, brother, you're right. If you think my mind's in another dimension, then sister, you're right. I'm in this world, not of it. Heaven's my home. I know I'm going to love it. If you think my head's in a different world, then brother, you're right." So we got to get our minds fixed on a different world. Now, fear in itself is not bad. You understand that. When we're little, we learn to be afraid of hot things, fire. Don't fall in there. Don't touch that. That's a good thing. But then fear becomes rampant and overtakes us if we are not careful. So here's a story about that. Would that surprise you if I have a story? I don't think so. But here it is. The piece of steel was hard, rough, tough, and unbending. It had to be molded and formed to be useful, just like fear would be. Well, the axe spoke up first. "I'll use my blade and cut him down to size." Well, at first, there were just some small strokes. They didn't do any good. Harder and harder the axe swung. The steel stayed just the same. The axe head was scarred and scraped forever. "I give up," he said. "Nothing can change this piece of steel." Then the saw moved in. "The steel cannot withstand the tearing of my furious teeth. I'll shape him up in no time at all." And the saw began back and forth on that piece of steel. Nothing happened to the steel except the saw lost all its teeth, and it finally said, "I give up. Nothing can change this piece of steel." Well, the hammer said, "Move aside. I can beat some sense into him. I'll take care of him." And the hammer swung and beat. The steel never changed. But finally, the hammer head flew off. The hammer was broken and said, "I give up. Nothing can change this rod of steel." And then the little quiet flame stepped forward and said, "Can I give it a try?" The axe and the saw and the hammer all laughed. "If our force and strength can't do anything, what could you ever do?" "Just watch," the flame said. Wrapped itself around that piece of steel, began to warm it. No longer the flame caressed the steel, the softer it became, until at last it was shaped and formed into what it was intended to be. The flame said to the axe and the saw and the hammer, what strength and force and anger could never achieve, love with its warmth and touch will always win. That's why Paul said the greatest of all is love. Perfect love is what casts out fear. 3 things Paul said abide forever: faith, hope, and love. You understand, fear doesn't even make the list. It doesn't count. Not in that different world you need to get to. One more thing. Here's a think spot for you, just about this, about focus. Stop watering your weeds and pay more attention to your flowers. One day closer.